Again, I'm Harvey Morrison. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here at Marion Square. We appreciate the opportunity to present to everybody. There's been a lot of talk recently. The interest has gone up quite a bit around post-quantum encryption, and we want to talk a little bit about what I think is driving some of that today, along with along with the NIST requirements and OMB requirements that agencies should be thinking about. So in the latter half of this year, as I mentioned, there's been a notable surge in the interest and activity around the transition of federal agencies to post-quantum encryption. Several key developments, I think, have driven this momentum. First and foremost, it coming in August of this year when NIST, I think, achieved a major milestone by releasing the first three cryptographic standards for post-quantum encryption after years of collaboration with industry experts. The standards that they came out with were FIPS 203, which is designed for general encryption, FIPS 204, which is focused on digital signatures using an encryption framework called Crystals Dilithium, and then FIPS 205, which is another digital signature standard, which leverages Sphinx as its algorithm. NIST continues to evaluate additional PQ algorithms and is expected to release the FIPS 206 algorithm, which is another digital signature standard in FY25. Now, with these standards in place, the emphasis, I feel, has shifted to federal agencies to now implement the required transition plans for post-quantum encryption. These efforts are guided by directives such as the National Security Memo 10, OMB 2302, and then the recent developments are including OMB's July progress report to Congress, and NIST recently released just last month draft transition to post-quantum cryptography standards report. This draft report is actually open for review and comment at the moment on the NIST website. I think these documents really provide a clear framework for agencies to really start to move forward with this critical post-quantum transition. So again, I think as the NIST these standards have been out and these requirements have been out, but since NIST actually has come up with these standards now, I think the community is starting to shift back and say, okay, what do we have to do to get ready? Emily, if you'll go to the next slide, that would be great. I want to talk a little bit more about the guidance that's been given. So the folks on the phone here, especially if you're part of a government agency, can start to think about, okay, what do we need to do now? The release of the cryptographic standards, as I said, has really set the stage for federal agencies to start to act on the actual transition to post-quantum encryption. The foundation for this transition is built on several key directives and reports that provide really a roadmap for agencies to mitigate quantum risk and then achieve, compliance. So the first one is National Security Memo 10 or NSM 10, which was released in May of 22 and was really the first directive to formally address the quantum threat. It required federal agencies to conduct a comprehensive inventory of their cryptographic assets, assess vulnerabilities to quantum computer threats, and then start to prioritize their risks. OMB Memo 2302 followed that National Security Memo and really provided for agencies actionable guidance, outlining specific steps and timelines for developing and then implementing post-quantum encryption transition plans. It really emphasized cross-agency coordination and reporting to ensure measurable progress. I can tell you myself, I've been in this space for a little while. I've done several different webinars like this. And I know as of late summer, early into fall, a lot of agencies still haven't gotten ready and have done their inventory, much less start to look at their prioritization and roadmap plans. So again, I think with these algorithms now becoming out and now becoming a standard, these are going to start to come to the forefront. In November, NIST released their draft transition report. And again, this is out on the NIST website for folks to take a look at. But in this draft report, NIST outlined the technical roadmap for transitioning from quantum vulnerable cryptographic algorithms to post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. This report really emphasizes the collaborative effort required between federal agencies, their technology partners, and other stakeholders to ensure a really smooth and secure transition to post-quantum encryption. Because again, this is really about a prioritization program and ensuring that as your partners start to make post-quantum encryption solutions available, the rest of your organization can support it and things can continue to move smoothly. So, why does all this matter now? Really, the convergence of these directives, coupled with the release of the NIST PQE standards, I think has really heightened the awareness across the federal ecosystem of the urgent need for actions. So again, agencies are not only required to comply with these mandates, but must also navigate the complexities, as I talked about, of identifying and addressing quantum vulnerabilities while also maintaining their operational security. So again, this is more than just doing an inventory. There's identifying gaps, prioritizing systems for migration, developing a roadmap and budgets. And as we've all talked, and as I've talked with several agencies, right, trying to figure out the best way to integrate all of this into an ongoing post or a zero trust program also is something that's top of mind of all these different organizations. Just as an aside, and you can ask about this at the end, we have worked actively with Carahsoft to put several engagements together and support documentation to provide to agencies to help them start to think about and get across this post-quantum transition program. If you go to the next slide, please. So with the release of NIST cryptographic standards and the directives driving PQE transition plans, it's clear that federal agencies really need to act quickly to address the challenges posed by post-quantum computing. And this really brings us, I think, to a critical question is, why does this transition matter? And what are the real risks quantum computing poses to encryption today? Because this is something everybody says, it'll be in the future. We don't really need to focus on it and get ready for it right at this moment. But let's take a moment and really kind of consider the significant threats associated with quantum computing and its impact on encryption, and why agencies should be thinking about this now, making it a priority. In my view, there are three main risks that we need to keep in front of mind when we think about the state of quantum computing today. And one of them is really the imminent arrival of quantum computers. Reliable sources such as RAND Corporation, the Government Accountability Office, and leading quantum researchers all estimate that by 2030, we could see a quantum computer capable of running Shor's algorithm, which could break public key cryptography like RSA and elliptic curve. To put this in perspective, 2030 is, just right now 5 years away. For organizations tasked with protecting sensitive data, this leaves very little time to map, plan, fund, and execute enterprise-wide transition plans. For those following developments in the field, you may have seen news late this year about Chinese researchers claiming a quantum breakthrough using D-Wave's advanced quantum computer. While this success involved factoring a 50-bit RSA integer, far from the 248-bit used, the pace of advancement makes it clear that this problem is actively being worked on. And the other interesting note to this is they used a optimization-focused approach versus a factoring-focused approach, which everybody thought was going to be the way they were going to break RSA encryption. But instead, they've thought about it and made it more of an optimization problem. So again, this just puts, clouds the field or the space more in, hey, could there be a different way to use a quantum computer, which could shrink that time from 2030 to sometime even sooner? And then lastly, agencies really need to think about steal now and decrypt later. If you consider the vast amounts of data across your enterprise that has a shelf life of 5 years or more, this includes PII, operation reports, intellectual property. If 2030 is the target for quantum computers capable of breaking RSA, this data is already within the danger window and at risk of being stolen now and decrypted later. So this underscores, I think, the urgency of transitioning to to quantum resistant encryption before it's too late. And then the last thing that I'll hit on here is the size and the complexity of this transition. So maybe if you'll go to the next slide, please. If you start to think about government agencies and really the scale of this transition, just looking at the civilian government, there's 2 million federal civilian employees, right? Not including DoD and contractors. Most of these use encrypted devices like laptops, desktops, tablets, smartphones. All this is going to have to be moved over. Over half of the federal agencies polled as of today have deployed IoT devices from sensors to cameras, all of which rely on encryption. And then all the infrastructure that's out there, everything from routers, firewalls, and then don't forget agency specific applications, which will all need to be transitioned. So, from custom built solution or for custom built solutions, agencies must determine not just how to transition them, but whether they can be transitioned at all. So some of these legacy systems weren't designed to support post-quantum encryption, need to be replaced entirely. So you have to add that sort of procurement on top of the other transitioning thing that you're doing. So this is going to be a massive coordination effort. Again, while some of the responsibility will fall on contractors and vendors to make this transition, the ultimate responsibility for overall validation, funding, and ensuring compatibility is going to lie with the government, right? And compatibility challenges like those we saw earlier this year with the release of CrowdStrike, and it didn't work with Microsoft, and everything shut down. Compatibility is something that everybody needs to keep in the back of their mind as they're piecing this together. So if you'll just hit the last slide there for me, please. Just as a reminder, right? This is a high level of some of the big things that agencies are required to have done at this point. There's the inventory piece that's out there, and keep in mind that's got to be done annually. But then also on top of that, there's the prioritization, there's the roadmap. So there's a lot of other tasks that fall out of that inventory that organizations really need to think about and start to put in place now that these NIST standards are done. So with that, I think as a background, what I want to do now is turn it over to Pete and have him talk about how QSecure is helping agencies in this overall transition process and be compliant.
Thanks, Harvey. Good to see everybody here. The next polling question is up. I'll let y'all review that. By the way, I'm looking at the attendees, and there's some real ringers out there, so I'm expecting some great questions. So while you're looking at that, for those that aren't looking at the polling question or looking at it, it's really asking what's your organization's primary concern in this transition world we live in. Hopefully I get at some of these for you, and it's in the meat of what I'm going to talk about. Cost has got to be one of them. How many bodies does it take to do it? Am I compatible or backwards compatible? Do I have any expertise on this, etc.? And do I even understand what I'm doing or what I'm being asked to do? All right. About what we would expect if you look at the results here. Pretty evenly split on the first two. How much does it cost? 33%. And then is it compatible? So you're looking at half of us all think, how much cost and time does it take? And do I need to build a new building to do it? And then, by the way, what the hell is PQC? And then the timeline associated with it as well. So hopefully everybody got some answers on that one. Thanks. Em, would you go to the next slide for me, please? All right, not designed to be a word chart, but let's go over some of the basics. By all means, this is just from me at this for about 4 years now. NIST approved, and if you notice, I have 3 acronyms. I'm not just making up acronyms. PQC, PQE, and QRC. In essence, they're all getting at the same thing. What I've heard, and I'll be open to suggestions from the rest of you guys, what I've heard mostly is the QRC is a congressional language that went from the House and the Senate about 6 months ago. By the way, SecDef is supposed to brief the House on 15 February next year on what you're doing with the new NIST standards, and quantum resistant cryptography was the words they used. PQE, post-quantum encryption, has what I've been the acronym that I found used mostly out of our scientific and academic community. It's in the papers and the sightings and the bibliographies everywhere you go. It's been that way for a while. And then post-quantum cryptography has been more along the BFSI and the other players commercially and in both uniform and non-uniform side of how we implement it. But they're all basically getting at the same thing. The root of it, Harvey went into this pretty significantly, that DNA of the threat is, and don't be confused, it's right out of China. It's called the Fourth Information Revolution. Their 14th five-year plan, they come out with five-year plans every 5 years, as it turns out, ends in December. And then the 15th five-year plan starts in January. So I would expect more news coming out showing we've accomplished our part of what we said we were going to do with this information revolution and the quantum computing side of the house. So if you look at that, this is what Harvey mentioned there. This is a May of 24 revision using D-Wave's new annealing capability. It is a scientific article, but look at the title. It's Quantum Annealing Public Key Cryptography Attack Algorithms. Most of our, normally you would expect a scientific article to be for altruistic purposes, for the good of mankind. Look what we can do with DNA mapping, gene folding. Look at the new things we're getting after to solve cancer, Alzheimer's, some of the harder things that are medical needs, or some energy or water capability. This one is focused exactly like Harvey said. And by the way, it goes right back to my IEEE article on variational quantum factoring and quantum unconstrained binary optimization using the best of high performance computers. And at the time, noisy intermediate scale quantum computers, NISQ. And in essence, what this article says, and it says it in English, but I don't read Mandarin, but for those of you that do, have at it. In essence, it says, we've been able to prove that we're out of the noisy intermediate scale quantum world. And this new attack vector allows us learning with errors, low density parity checks. We are proving in our world that Schnorr, not Peter Shor, but Schnorr's algorithm does scale for us to work together on variational quantum algorithm the way we're using D-Wave. And by the way, China has its own version there they don't talk much about, but they're using that as well. So it's not a surprise. This came out in May of 24. It was revisited with several articles about 2 weeks ago, and they finally mentioned it. If you look at the bibliography, some of those are from 2010, some are from 2002. So they've been at this for a while. So don't be confused what this threat is, what it's after. And it's after two things. It's after our asymmetric keys or pseudo-random keys, and it's also after the algorithms themselves. So learning with errors and the parity check and the variational quantum algorithms that they're using as attack vectors are coming after both, breaking that factored number, the non-deterministic capability of the quantum computer to do of asymmetric keys that holds our post-quantum or our pre-quantum PKI in bounded edge. And they're also going, hey, the algorithm's going to fall too. So earlier this last week, actually Wednesday, Lily Chen produced what you see there, the crypto transition and agility. It's a great download, and it's at the bottom there. If Emily, if we send this link out, that link is pulls up the basically the full show that she gave there. I chose one particular piece here because it spoke to what 54% of us said. What's the resource cost and timing? And do I have the equipment to do this? Which is on the forefront of most people's minds. Really, it's, am I going to actually have the capability to be funded to do this? And if so, how do I go show good stewardship for efficiency that I'm using these funds in time to do something about it? And Emily has this one here. It's on slide, I think that is slide that I showed. You'll see it when you pull up. It's slide 7. In essence, she says, and it's worth me taking time for the auto AI. Go back to that slide, please, Em. Crypto agility is the ability for machines to select their security algorithms in real time and for me to see them in effect. And it's based on what I choose. My organization, we got somebody from the VA, we got others from the defense industrial base, we've got others from uniform and non-uniform services here. I want to see those in place in real time based on my orchestration of what my community has said is our standard. And we know that ML-Chem, FIPS 203, and the other parts that NIST announced need to be a part of it. But I've got some end-of-life machines. I've got some low-performance compute capacity. I've got some high-performance compute. So I want to put this in as seamless a fashion as possible. Number two, she says, I want to add these new cryptographic features and algorithms on my existing hardware. It's neat. If you look over on the far side of that, it says, consider the interoperability. We at QuSecure, fortunately with Carahsoft as well, have said this for 3 years. A US founded, funded, and focused company that brings post-quantum cryptography and backwards compatibility so you can use your existing equipment, including even end-of-life equipment, is going to be necessary because their information warfare is going to go with what we currently have in the field. So that's what she says on number two, and that's what backwards compatibility is. And the last part, number three, I call it graceful degradation. Can I retire or seamlessly move more obsolete or vulnerable systems out without ripping and replacing everything? And that's what we're after. She talks earlier in that brief about some things that are pretty neat, and it's good for us to understand why we are where we are. Some of the original schemes that we called standards were envisioned in the 80s, implemented in the 90s. Think about those. They're under the titles of SB 856A, 56B. So that's Diffie-Hellman, RSA, and they're based on key exchange and key transports like X 9.42, 63, 944. Those were in the 90s. Envisioned in the 80s, developed in the 90s, and they're built around key exchange and transport, and they are not available right now to prove that they're quantum resistant. They're quantum vulnerable. So we're coming after ML-Chem now because CCA2 and NIST says that's what we need in there. So that should give you some history on it. And what she's going over here is this is what crypto agility is. So now, Em, go to the next one, please, Emily. I went through some of that for you guys' sake, just because some Otter AI folks are taking notes, and you can go back and study them and read them later. There's two more pieces, and then hopefully, Emily, over to you guys. If we can get, and you're right, Michael, extremely quantum vulnerable, and we're already proving it, even in the old noisy intermediate scale quantum computing world. Now, as we step into the intermediate quantum computing, that's when we start seeing the scale captures something that will actually break. So in this particular case, I've got both of these listed here. Another link for you. Great. I like the title, and Brandon, hats off to you because it says, has PKI become the tacky bell bottoms in your IT closet? Okay, I'm not that old. I don't actually have or ever had bell bottoms, but I can envision it because I watched my mom and dad. So it's time to refresh with crypto agility. And one of the things that Brian writes in this article, which is exquisitely well written, and I'll read it here. In many ways, outdated cryptographic assets are like tiny time bombs, dispersed in hard to find spots across thousands of devices, locations, processes, and processes upon processes, and hidden processes inside of hardware entangled software like ASICs sitting in there as well, that your organization may not be aware of an issue until that asset is compromised and impacts your communication, web commerce, document signing, and other essential processes, i.e. it's costing you money and you didn't know it. If you look at my notes over there, I call those, we're all familiar because we grew up, unless you had your head under a rock for the past 20 plus years, we've been in the global war on terror. So we're all very familiar with what IEDs are. In essence, these are pre-quantum IEDs buried everywhere. It's important to know that war on terror, we sent people out. We saw it at 9/11, and then we sent people out to fight it, and IEDs were buried, and we had men and women going by waiting for things to blow up. This is not out and away. This is here on your laptop, on your phone, in your printer. It's in our IT and it's in our OT. So it's very important for us to understand the perimeter that we set up for security back in the 80s and 90s and have lived on in a PKI access management world is now breached. It's not ready, like James Scobie, the quote that I have from him, and James is a great guy leading a lot of this as well. Former SEC CISO and currently another CISO with another company says, relying on legacy PKI and privileged access management is not just outdated, it's a significant threat. They were built for an era that had clear network boundaries, not today's environment of hybrid clouds, remote work, and interconnected system. So whether you call it PQC, PQE, QRC, whatever it is, it needs to be implemented now. It's available. And as of 14 August, NIST goes, there they are, your turn, time to implement them. The great news here, and this is for you guys that may not know, on 18 August, 4 days later, QSecure was implemented in technical readiness experiment, urgent resolve at Camp Atterbury, and we were used and assessed using ML-Chem for their Joint Operations Center. So it's available, it's implementable right now for you. And to go to the next slide, and we'll get on how and why and what it means. So in this particular case, what we're trying to give you is a backwards compatible, holistic network solution and an approach that you can adopt as you see fit. By the way, it's affordable. Just call Carahsoft. Michael is ready for you, and so is Emily. What we're giving you is the ability to protect your network with quantum resilient capabilities that minimize the impact to a vulnerability in the future, and also don't hit your pocketbook so hard that you're going to have to tear down a building and buy a new one to get it in there. So you get a full platform of it with a single foundation and control plane that you can make your crypto management and remediation and movement rapid. You get the cryptographic controls so you can configure the asymmetric side of the house back over into symmetric key algorithms without a significant bandwidth hit. We'll get into that in a little bit. By the way, you can adjust your key length and your static and ephemeral key encapsulation message, not a key exchange or transport, but an actual key encapsulation mechanism that allows you to make room for end-of-life compute. Guaranteed, there is going to be some Marine, and I know because my son's going into the Marine soon, there will be some Marine with a Windows 95 laptop with duct tape on it and sand in a keyboard. We're going to have to make room for that group of people, as well as the people with exquisite high-performance compute, so we're ready to run those without losing information capability. You don't need to rip and replace, and you have an orchestration that's available to you that's easy to manage. You're able to see your data transport and transition across all your entire network from application to a network to a core, and we'll go over those next. Next slide, please, Ms. M. So what does that mean for you? Some other acronyms that we'll throw in just to keep you tested and make sure that you're getting your CPEs. So there's a quantum secure layer. We let the TLS work, and then we basically double wrap it with a symmetric session with a quantum secure layer that's running under these algorithms with quantum random numbers that are NIST approved, that also lives in the post-quantum noise framework. In other words, the PQ noise protocol is already out there. We know it works. Now you don't have an asymmetric key exchange that's visible. The pattern of lifing for those exchanges is not available if you're studying it, but you do have a smooth transition, and you've got the capability to see a newer adaptation of what was the old noise framework. That's what we use on this as well. And obviously, we're in the Kerberos Kubernetes side of the house. If you look at the right side here, the full control of your network, there's some significant benefits for this that I know I wanted when I was in the military or at Lawrence Livermore or in the defense industrial base. Please show me a snapshot of my what I don't have as quantum secure layer network traffic so I can prioritize where I need that to go. Please don't just give me an SBOM, but give me a cryptographic bill of materials so I can prove this is where I'm going. When SecDef talks to Congress, he goes, yes, here's what we're doing about quantum resistant cryptography. There's my cryptographic bill of materials that I've used over these, and this is my plan for the next. By the way, when I put that symmetric session in, the micro segmentation that I talk about means I have a symmetric connection from server to agent. There's no more room for man-in-the-middle attacks. That's a significant benefit because some of those pre-QIEDs are buried in there, and now you can no longer get at them because we've got it capable of preventing attackers from jumping in there. By the way, we can tunnel through or on top of any other additive encryption layer. So think you're tackling in Happy's world, work through those and push it through just like before. We've proved this, and we're happy to give you the information if you get in touch with us. We proved that we're 99.2 or more, the exact same bandwidth that we've had before because of the symmetry. So in other words, most of the time we've seen an increased algorithm that would slow us down or give you some more latency. In this particular case, it's 99.2, exactly the same that you've seen before. And then, by the way, we've got some capability as you get the control plane to see some new defensive and maybe even some offensive capabilities that we haven't had before because we haven't had this single control plane or orchestrated capability. Next slide, Emily. All right. This last piece is not designed to be an eye chart, but it's designed to show you that control plane of cryptography that gives you the resiliency and the speed of implementation that you're actually looking for because you can see it in place. If you see at the bottom, you'll see the QProtect orchestrator that we have. You see control plane traffic, data plane traffic, and then local authorization. In other words, what do I do about it? Do I have control of this so I can tell my bosses and the other people that I report to for profit and loss or for return on investment or for implementation's sake that we actually have the authority to move this and be responsive in an administrative way. So if you see the black check mark, that's yours. And then you have a larger orchestration capability that's also driven by the mandate that you choose. So the orchestrator gives you the server configuration, our key distribution center, what we used to call a quark, now it's just part of our quantum orchestrator, the authentication policies that you choose to implement, the network configurations for what you need, where you need it to go, extend that perimeter back out so those IEDs are no longer going to blow up on you or disrupt your security or disrupt more than anything your commerce. And then what kind of authorization policies do you want to have? Do you want to set a timeline? Do you want it to roll out with age? Do you just naturally re-roll these? It's your choice, and we'd like to give you that capability. So as you go back up outside of the data plane traffic and you start looking at the control plane, the gold lines you see there, you see the proxy agents on either side for the APIs, the content you have to the external APIs, and then inside that data plane in the middle, you see the ingress and egress routes that we have set up and the services that you can go all the way down back through from a router up to servers, out to endpoint users. And heck, 2 years ago, we even bent pipe this through space, so both LEO and GEO orbits. So yes, it's available, and yes, it's made for the edge. And that's what we're trying to give you is the opportunity to get that in the edge and get it fixed. So I think I've gone my 15 minutes. We're coming up on the Q&A. Hopefully I gave you some new stuff. I see a couple of hands raised and I got some questions. And Michael, I'll let you run from here.
I think that'll be me. So I can start. Yeah, the third CPE question is live, so we'll start there. If you guys could take a few minutes to answer that. And then, yes, we do have some comments in the chat. I'm not sure if everyone's keeping up, but Pete, I think you addressed Dr. Michaels. I think we might be good on that one.
Well, that's high praise from Dr. Michael Crowley. He's a tough one to impress. So hopefully we're meeting your needs quick there too.
So we had a question come in and you probably answered it, but you might want to revisit it since it did come in. Is it affordable for my personal electronics?
Yes. Now the question becomes, what's your software environment? Where did that come from, Emily?
One of the attendees. That's all. I didn't get any additional content.
Okay. So yeah, the answer is it is affordable. The price we currently have set out depends on how much you want, because you pay by the connections from the core to the router to the end user, and those are bundled for you. Obviously, if you want some white glove service, we can add to that as well. But we need to adapt it to the software environment you currently have. We're trying to hit an enterprise software environment that's the most useful to protect as much as we possibly can, but we're always optimizing going into individual users as well. The goal being to basically make this a quantum protected network at the same price you pay for enterprise VPNs right now. So the software environment, if you're not using some of the larger chunked software that we run on, we can optimize that for you and keep looking, because we're always making milestone development with a bunch of smart engineers and capable players out there.
So he did put in the chat Microsoft with a private server, and he also said we'll be in touch.
Okay, perfect. And then Michael hit it too, and other guys are asking, get in touch with us. Michael has a capability. We do here at QuSecure. It literally should be an easy thing for you to see a demo in less than 5 minutes of quantum secure layer stood up from routers to servers to endpoint users. and show you that in place so you can see how fast it is. So I don't know if everybody's answered the polling question. It's still up here, but this is getting at what's your game plan and some of that, and then it disappeared. So as expected, here it is. Some good 6% have started implementing. It took 7.5 years for NIST to announce, and then we've been 15 years of knowing China. So we definitely need to recognize that this is information warfare, and a quantum computer is equal to a nuclear threat in our information domain. And then 33% really gets us back up to almost the 50% that says we've got a game plan. It hasn't been fully identified. Now, what can we do to put something in place right now that makes a difference? My request would be give us a call. We're ideally optimized to let you have test drives in a research, development, test, and evaluation game plan. It's priced correctly. You can even add it to an existing GWAC, government-wide acquisition contract vehicle task order. All of them have room in section 2 or 3 for next generation technology that counters a threat and brings more capable equipment and facilities and utility to the United States government. So that's an easy thing to get at with that. Give us a call. We'll show you what we can do, and we want to work with you because we need this in people's hands. Lord have mercy. Michael or Harvey, get in here. I've talked too long.
We have 2 additional questions that came through chat. I think they're just quick thought questions, but the first one is, where is the architecture documented or specified? We might need to follow up offline to see any further context on that one.
I'm not seeing that one. Was that directed to me, Emily?
Yeah, it says for hosts and panelists. It's in chat. And then the second part of that was, does the realization of this architecture require Q computing on the back end?
Okay, great. I see those now. Thanks for so much. You'll have to answer that question if they can answer the CPE questions later. Rob, you got a lot of those. And then I see the question here from Mr. Wolf. He must be a trained killer. Any potential security risk associated with hybrid crypto systems combining classical and quantum resistant algorithms during the transition phase? And at this point, no. Matter of fact, and give us a call and we'll show you in our demo. We even have a TLS fallback option to keep you connected in the middle of it. You just recognize you go from under a QSL to outside of a QSL to remediate that situation. And the answer to that other question, does any of this require us, my organization, or me to start writing in Python and have our own quantum computer to do this? No. This is designed to work on our classical computing infrastructure, PKI, access management we currently have, lay over the top, put that protection in place with the current NIST approved algorithms and future algorithms. That's what we can do as well. And it also rolls out level 4, 5, or 6 quantum random numbers that roll over the top of the PQ noise framework and push quantum resistant numbers rather than living on that one pseudo random key that you've had forever. Hopefully that answers that question.
Was that for, and that was Miss Wolf.
Oh, Miss Wolf. Okay. Now a real killer.
Trained killer.
So we've got some more coming in. Harvey, feel free to roll in on here if you see something that I'm missing.
Did you see the next one come in from JJ?
I didn't see one from JJ yet. I've got quite a few in the chat. Let me see if I can get these.
I can pose it to you. Pose it to you. That way you have it.
Okay.
What recommendations would you give to partners engaging their clients to help fold in quantum readiness / PQC into the current ZTA strategy?
Man, what a pro. What a great question. Plan for it, budget for it, and implement it rapidly, and it will pay for itself. And then roll it up under existing task orders, or in Carahsoft's way, distributor seller of record, pull up under an existing IDIQ or GWAC and start implementing it right now. It's a differentiator for not just whatever program you're putting on, but for your ability to use it and to drive change going forward. So pull it into your current ZTA strategy right now. All it is, in my Tennessee knuckle dragger. It's a turbo on top of your existing engine that's going to make you run faster and grow more equity and more capability. Hopefully that answered your question.
Perfect. I think that's all in the chat. Now I do want to address Michael. I think he had 3 different things. I think you kind of touched on it, Pete, but just wanted to confirm. Yes, the recording will come out in email. Everyone on today will get a thank you email that will include the recording, any links, websites, documents that Pete or Harvey send me that want to relay out to you guys. And then there will be a form that you can submit in that, schedule a demo, because I know that was, I think, mentioned twice of someone wanting to see that. So I'll put a button in there, and it's just a quick form that you can fill out, and we'll work really quick to get that set up with you and Pete. Perfect.
Okay, and anybody else I see a couple more questions coming in. You've got our information, and between Michael and Emily, Robert, when you talk about the capability to put this in place, get in touch with us and we'll work through the details of how to implement it. Looks like all the other questions were answered in here, Emily, that I see so far.
Yeah, I think I had one question though for you, Pete, just to kind of give an example. So are you able to provide an example of how QSecure solutions have been successfully implemented in organizations or industries?
Sure. I've got several of those. Most of the ones that I'm more familiar with, when now I'm in emerging markets, so we're encompassing a lot of these. Most of the ones that we've dealt with before, and we have some commercial ones, my familiarity has been more on the public sector, federal side of the house, where the Army says, we like what we see, we'd like to get this on Army Team Awareness Kit. We also like it for our next generation Project Convergence, because we know we're going to deal with secure but unclassified environments, and we want to see something that's agile and resilient being able to be placed on it. We've demonstrated this on a Dell product that actually fits in an airline overhead. So it's 42 to 44 pounds. It's our quantum orchestrator in a tight bundle. We ran it on solar power. Before NIST announced we were running all 4 algorithms because we didn't know which one they were going to use. And so we were proving our agility in that. And we actually bumped it through Starlink, and we ran it over a normal course of networks. 2.5 years ago, the Alaska NORAD region paid us to do a SIPR phase 3, and we used open network capability, and we pulled ADS-B, the Area Data Surveillance Broad, i.e. the FAA stream around the Colorado Springs area to prove that we could track and keep that under a quantum secure layer with quantum random numbers, and we used Kyber. So that's an example that we had 2.5 years ago, and we have more going now. Another one going with Air Force Global Strike Command, pulling this into lighter environments and then into enterprise environments for them as well. And then multiple other players asking, how can I get you in my operating center? How can I get you out to the edge through an AWS cloud instance for a joint operation center? So those are all ones that we'll be happy to give you the details on and the data from them. And then it should be available if you're in the government out of OSD R&E, the results of Urgent Resolve, where we were used and assessed, because they took some pretty good detailed notes on the things that we did, how we did it, and the data associated with latency, bandwidth, et cetera.
Very nice. Just check to see if we have anything else coming in. We had one additional question. Are there any potential drawbacks or limitations to implementing quantum resistant encryption specifically within the QSecure solution?
Yeah, that's a great one. The drawback and risk associated with putting this in was much more in your face before 14 August, when NIST announced that ML-Chem, formerly the artist formerly known as Kyber, was their solution. Now, if you go back to recall the great brief Harvey gave, where the National Security Memorandums and the Office of Management and Budget laid out timelines, we just blew through those timelines because a lot of them had 2023 in their title. So the risk is now, oh, I was supposed to do this before. Am I going to do it now? The risk really now is, how fast can I do it? And so I would say a tailored rollout where you prove that it's capable, your administrators are ready to run it, and then you've actually started pushing it out from router to server to endpoint users. in a tailored fashion is the only risk, is how fast can you do it and how quickly can you get the people that are administrating this environment to do it correctly for you the way you want it done.
Thanks, Pete. I do have a guest that's raising their hand. I'm okay allowing them to talk if they want to come over the line, as long as you are. Yeah.
Over to you're running the webinar.
All right, Jamie, I did give you permission. You can unmute if you'd like and come and actually ask your question over the line if you have something.
Maybe he was just giving me a high five.
Yeah, maybe, or it could have been an accident. But if you are there, Jamie, and need to ask a question, you're able to now. All right. Let's do one or two more questions here. I know Harvey's internet was going a little in and out. So Harvey, if you're there, I can pose a question. If you're not, no worries. So Pete, beyond encryption, in what other areas of cybersecurity might quantum computing have a significant impact, and how does QSecure address those areas?
So we're really trying to stay focused in QSecure on what we consider the most vulnerable target with the largest market that needs addressing right now in the world of quantum at large. Boy, there's a lot to unpack in that, Emily, so I won't go too far on it. In essence, we entered modern physics in 1900 when classical physics said there's something else going on, and that was the beginning of what I would call the quantum age. We didn't know it yet. We're still smack dab in the middle of the quantum dark ages. We don't let arrogance get to your head. There's so much to go to get a true quantum computer that is going to be able to execute not just Shor's algorithm, but actually hold together quantum error correction, replenish, recapitalize, and work seamlessly with high performance compute capacity. So quantum computing is one edge that we're going to see some wonderful things on top of some of those new attack vectors we talked about. Quantum sensing is the next biggest one, huge in that particular case, because we get to do a quantum Fourier transform and see so much more. For instead of an MRI, I do a QRI. I get better layouts for timing and navigation, and the list goes on. QKD will come on with a lot of hardware. Remember, none of those standards from compute to sense to QKD have been set. Their technology readiness level is low. They take a lot of high-end hardware and capability, and they're not ready for normal rollout or deployment. What is ready right now is protect yourself from those pre-quantum IEDs that are baked into my information ecosystem right now. That's why we're staying laser focused on that, because not only does our nation need it, but information freedom globally needs it. And that's where we sit right now until we see more adoption, resilience, and implementation in place with an understanding that we're actually protected. That answered that question for you, Emily?
We have time for probably one last question there, Pete. And I'll pose it again since I was on mute. How does the timeline for quantum computing advancements affect your strategic planning for cybersecurity?
Boy, who asked that question? Give that genius an extra CPE credit. Yeah, Mike Tyson said it best. As an old boxer, I'll say it this way: everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. An adversary has a vote. China's made their vote clear. Other adversaries that are with them are going to get a free tag along with that and being able to use it. So the answer to your question is the store now, steal now, harvest now, collect now, decrypt later is already underway. The sooner we protect your non-pattern of lifing for asymmetric key exchanges and the data that you're sending, especially the sensitive data that comes out of a large language model when AI is going to do that, whether it's blue collar AI or white collar AI, the sooner you get that data protected in transport and for storage, the better, because it just means your vulnerability stops.